that Elden Ring was shattered. In our home, across the fog, the lands between.
Welcome to Elden Ring, an open-world adventure where you play as a tarnished of no renown, blessed by grace. You must travel across the lands between, battling monsters and demigods to become the Elden Lord. In this adventure, players are rewarded for mastering combat, leveling up, and defeating powerful bosses. There are over 200 unique bosses in Elden Ring, 238 to be specific. 309 weapons, hundreds of skills, hundreds of spells and incantations, and quite literally, endless ways to play. Players are rewarded with runes for every creature they destroy. This resource is used as a currency in the world, as well as the primary resource to level up the character. Small, weak early enemies can drop as few as just 10 to 15 runes, whereas late game bosses can drop upwards of millions. This incentivizes the player to fight everything and to overcome every challenge to get stronger and more powerful as they explore the lands between.
Oh, rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. And one other, whom grace would again bless. A tarnished of no renown. Cross the fog to the lands between. To stand before the Elden Ring. And become the Elden Lord.
As the player awakens, they are thrown into a dark, unforgiving fantasy world as the starting class they have chosen. They are given but a small, brief area to explore, to get used to basic controls before being thrown into their first boss encounter. This fight is unbeatable for all but the most skilled players. The player is almost immediately set up to fail. After the first death, the player will awaken in a new location deep underground. As they take the elevator up, they are given their first glimpse of the vastness of the lands between. Players will soon discover sites of grace. They look like small bonfires scattered around the world. These act as areas of rest for the player when they heal and replenish mana. They also serve as save spots and fast travel locations the player can use to assist them in moving around the world. The sites also show a gentle path to where the players should be heading. The sites of grace all subtly guide the player towards a nearby castle. This path contains a small gauntlet of enemies to fight. This helps teach the player basic combat as they progress and make their way towards the castle in the distance. As the player finds several more sites of grace, they will be met by Melina, who will offer the player a quest to meet her at the foot of the Erd Tree, the primary quest of the game.
I understand.
We will be rejecting her offer as we go on our own adventures.
An understanding. Summon me by grace, if you should reconsider.
Oi! You there. Could you help us out, Cully?
Elden Ring is a game that wants players to engage in violent conflict with the creatures of the world. This game will continue to challenge the player by throwing more powerful and deadly enemies at them. In a normal playthrough, the player would be encouraged to level up and master the combat mechanics. In this playthrough, I will be engaging in no combat, in no violence. I will not be leveling up the character. I will be exploring the world as a passive observer, a peaceful traveler. I wish to explore the beauty of this dark fantasy world without the distraction of combat and the drive to improve the character. I wish to test the limits of this game by seeing how far of the world I can explore before hitting a barrier I cannot pass without having to fight a boss.
Not ever. Then I ended up as a tree. Lucky you came along, really.
Early in my journey as a passive observer, I quickly learned that the world had no interest in allowing me to explore it peacefully. What used to be a struggle to defeat every enemy that challenged me has now become a desperate fight for survival. I had to use all my skill to evade and dodge while I collected valuable treasures guarded by deadly beasts. I could then exchange these items for valuable runes that normally could only be collected in mass by killing enemies. I also began to learn that if a creature was killed by another enemy, I would still collect their runes, even though I had no part in the violence. This allowed me to reap the rewards of NPCs just engaging in natural behavior in the world, and I was able to collect resources by simply being an observer. Another goal I created for myself was to purchase or find armor pieces. These had little to no benefits for gameplay, and were purely for aesthetic reasons. The term among fans of the series is called fashion souls. By limiting the type of gameplay I could participate in, each new piece of gear I found was a true delight to discover. When I found a merchant that had gear for sale that looked fun or interesting, I would empty my pockets and sell everything I could to get enough runes to afford my new outfits. I died countless times exploring poisonous swamps simply to collect a hat that looked interesting. Some of these areas were so deadly, it felt like fighting a boss, when in reality I was just facing the world. At this point, I was able to explore many of the world's main areas simply by walking into them. I was facing little to no resistance from the game to where I could go and explore. Many enemies felt harmless, as you could just sneak by them or just run past and they could not keep up. I was immediately able to explore most of Limgrave very early on, as it was the starting area of the game. I knew I was not able to make it to Lernia of the Lakes through the castle, as there was a boss in the way that I would have to fight and defeat to make it through that path. There was another way, a path that ran along the side of the castle, slightly hidden, but completely accessible. I was able to run past the enemies this way and make it to Lernia of the Lakes with almost no issue at all. Further south was the deadly lands of Caelid, a land full of toxic swamps and deadly enemies. I thought I had reached the ends of what I could explore in this world without fighting anything. The next major area in the world was the Atlas Plateau, which I thought was only accessible north of Lernia of the Lakes through a dungeon. I would not be able to make it through there, however, because I would have to fight a boss, and that would put an end to my exploration in the reachable world. And then I remembered. The Grand Lift of Dectus. The Grand Lift of Dectus is a lift that is in a highly fortified area, guarded by catapults, soldiers, and other hazards. This lift could get me into the Atlas Plateau. Unfortunately, for this to function, it requires 2 parts of a special medallion that's scattered across the world. One piece can be found in a castle somewhere in Limgrave. Another in a castle in Caelid. And now I have a clear goal. I need to find the 2 pieces of the medallion so I can activate the Grand Lift of Dectus. This will gain me access to the Atlas Plateau. I am first going to find the Dectus medallion half that is in Limgrave. It is in a castle somewhere along the eastern shore. After traveling for a bit, I noticed a small castle on a hill. This had to be the location. As I approached the castle, I was greeted by several friendly guards and the Great Pumpkin from the Charlie Brown Halloween special. Once in the castle, I was greeted by more guards and a display of fireworks. I ran to a nearby ladder to escape the carnage. A lone chest awaited me at the top. I was pleased to discover a medallion piece as I opened the chest. I planned my perfect escape from the castle to go find the other half of the medallion. The final piece resides in Caelid, in a castle similar to the first. The journey there would be much more dangerous than the one in Limgrave. I snuck, ran, and evaded past several dragons on my way to the castle. Once inside, I was again greeted by friendly members of the castle guard. After a bit of a chase, I made it up the ladder and found the last remaining piece of the medallion. And again, I flawlessly executed my escape plan. With the pieces of the medallion in hand, I made my way back to the Dectus lift. This time, I was allowed passage to the top. I had successfully made it to the Atlas Plateau. As I explored the Atlas Plateau, I came across the final obstacle in our journey of exploring the lands between. The next location the player needs to gain access to is the Lindell capital. It is walled off on all but a single entrance. This passage is blocked by an impossible door by a draconic tree set. I attempted many times to see if I could bypass this boss by using nearby giants to attack it, but had no success. It seems this may be an impassable wall in our path to explore. It seems there is no solution to gain access into the capital by non-violent means. Even though that this area is blocked, and undoubtedly many others throughout the world, it is incredible we were able to travel so far, see so much, and in the grand scheme of things, we haven't even begun to scrape the surface of what this game can offer for players. Elden Ring is truly a game of beauty, and challenge can be found in many different forms. The game was still a wonderful world to explore, with rich gameplay around every corner, all while ignoring the game's fundamental mechanics of fighting and combat. Players will be discovering new ways to explore the lands between for decades to come. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.